Viewers, thank you so much for joining me again with Erica Savage Wilson of Savage Politics, the amazing one. I'd like to learn a little bit more. I know, but share with our viewers. I was so proud of the work that you did in South Sudan a couple years ago. It still brings me chills, the impact that you made. And don't be modest. Share what you did and share some of the stories about. You and I talk all the time about how representation matters and how the women of that country were just so in awe and enamored to see a woman from the States that looked just like them, as beautiful as they are, and extremely intelligent in a position of influence. Share how that came about.
I'm so glad to do that. And so that's one of actually the things that I hold dear to my heart, Dr. Wilson, is definitely international travel and really advocacy internationally. And so our firm has had a relationship with South Sudan for well over 12 years, dealing back to the main piece was around clean water. And so we partnered with another organization to help bring clean water into South Sudan. South Sudan became a country 9 years ago. So they're actually the youngest nation in the world. They separated from the country of Sudan to become South Sudan. And for many of Sudanese people's existence, it has been really, they've been embroiled in civil wars that have lasted for years, for decades. When they broke free of Sudan, became an independent nation, one of the things that they really wanted to do was to understand the path to peace so that they could join the democratic efforts that they've seen in years before championed by the United States. So in that, those leaders signed a peace deal back in 2018. And through that peace deal were lined out many elements that the South Sudanese government needed to make sure that were benchmarks that they met in order to get the full support of the United States, of Norway, of the UK as well. And so, what our firm wanted to do is to be a broker of that as well, to be able to say we would like to leverage the influence that we have on Capitol Hill to be able to say these are the great things that are happening in South Sudan with a country that is less than 10 years old. And so I was given the opportunity of a lifetime to travel to South Sudan in February of 2017, and in kind of reviewing what we were going to be doing, which was going to a particular town, which is Yei River State in South Sudan. So you don't kind of get there directly. It's kind of, you take a plane, you land in Uganda, and then after that, you take a couple other planes until you get to this small kind of town. And in that town, they were really struggling with water. They're an agricultural city, and but they were really struggling for clean water. So was able to really kind of make the case for them continuing to have access not only to clean water but good infrastructure, lack of roads. We're talking about no cell towers, very difficult connections there, technology wise, and then education, because again, they were just coming out of the 2 years before that, they were just coming out of civil war once again. Um, so traveled there, talked with local leaders. And in when you were talking about the amazement behind seeing someone that looked like them from the States was completely overwhelming. I met with the governor, I met with his cabinet at that time, because leadership has since changed over, and just really got accounting for what was happening in that country and how we could be a connector. A lot of what we were seeing, because they were just coming out of civil war, were those individuals who had joined factions, and lived what, as we would say, in the bush, meaning that they lived really in the bush,
Right.
just as it says. How to those folks who had committed atrocities against their communities, but they wanted to integrate back in. And the reason that they had really turned to a lot of the chaos is because they themselves did not have food to eat. They themselves had lost parents and grandparents and sisters and brothers in the ongoing civil wars that had really been happening for decades, wanted to be integrated back in the community. And then also, all of it stemmed from lack of resources because of the extreme poverty, inflation of their particular currency. And so, saw up close, unfortunately, some women and men who had been harmed by those individuals that were living in the bush. We bore witness to someone that I have since adopted as a son, had his brothers actually taking custody, and the ransom was money. So it is lack of resources that was really leading a lot of their own countrymen to really turn against each other. So I got to meet some of the most amazing people. And the one thing that they tasked me with was to please bring their stories back to the United States. So in that, went back into the capital, which is Juba, met with leaders there, their president, their first vice president, diplomats, and really kind of discuss, what were the ways with which they were actively engaging in the population, particularly the agricultural population, to ensure that those communities were safe, and that some of the needs that needed to be met were met to be able to bring that back. In that, I also discovered that there was a political prisoner that was being held because he was really championing the youth, and the youth are the largest, they're the lion's share of the population in South Sudan. His name had been lifted before the House floor. His name was Peter B.R. Ajak. His name is Peter B.R. Ajak. And Peter was a PhD candidate for Cambridge that had flown home and was taken into custody, held into one of the worst prisons in South Sudan, which was the Blue House. And so once I saw that video, once I saw the work that he had done, I took all of that information, plus the information that I learned from meeting with the president, the first vice president, the local leaders. I met with tribal leaders from the Blue Nile tribes, just all kinds of individuals. I took all of that information back to my office to say, listen, here is a way that I believe that we could, in fact, really kind of impress that South Sudan is changing because they're going to free this political prisoner. We fast forward, continue in negotiations, work caucuses. And in January of 2020, I think one of the most magical things about 2020, he was in fact released. And I want to share this with your audience. And this is after the president of South Sudan and his deputy at the time, President Salva Kiir, his deputy, Dr. Rick Mashur, had the Pope kiss their feet, because he was also, the current pontiff was also urging to please do this in order for there to be some, real understanding that you all are in fact standing for freedom. Show your goodwill. And he kissed both of those feet, kissed both of their feet. That was around Easter 2019, and there was still no movement. So to see that our firm was very much so actively involved in Peter's release, and I was able to talk with him very really recently. I can't go into many details, but to hear him, to hear his family, to hear his wife, and just hear really the sigh of relief that they are somewhere safe after being in a hostile environment, and knowing that the work that was done to free him was actually successful work, and that South Sudan hopefully will continue to engage in this process, where they are really affording the democracy to work, was probably one of the more special times in my professional career.
Yes, yes. I love hearing that story over and over again. And so thank you for sharing that with our viewers. I affectionately refer to you as the modern day Ida B. Wells, because you are so, again, committed to advocating for those marginalized communities and individuals, and creating a voice, and putting yourself in harm's way to ensure, again, that equity is had by all, and so and freedom. as well. So thank you for doing that. I love hearing that story. I'd be remiss, and we're going to get ready to wrap up very shortly, but we cannot conclude this wonderful engagement without the viewers knowing about what does Savage Politics include? How can they reach you? Some of the great things that are on the horizon.
Thank you. So, Savage Politics is an independent arm that I developed, started about 3 years ago, and it is literally lifting below the fold commentary to the top of the fold. And what I mean by that, as a daughter of Albany, Georgia, that is kind of one of the things that has, really hurt me to understand that there just really was a disconnect from between how national politics does, in fact, impact local, right? And the same with local and national. So I wanted to kind of be a resource of being able to really take that political minutia and break it down in a way that people can see, whether they're in Albany, Georgia, or whether they're in Yay River State, South Sudan, to understand that when you have good information and you engage that information, that does give you power. And not only just to share that with people, but to bring them into direct action where they be able to see and feel that. And so Savage Politics is not only a podcast, it is also a 3 day a week live broadcast that goes every day, not every day, but every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7:30 a.m. People can go to my Facebook page and tune into that. Um, and then also, I do a newsletter, which used to be every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But on last Saturday, we started a really important mandate, which I'm calling the Election Flex. And it is 30 days of direct action. So it is putting in the hands of individuals, no matter who you are, something that you can do to help this country maintain some semblance of democracy. So that is an everyday campaign that we're going to continue to do until November the 3rd. And I did not want to make it very bulky, just something very simple where people, because we're all bombarded with information,
Mhm.
present company included, just give them something where they can kind of catch a glimpse, click a link, and go to it. And so, in the future of the Savage Political Bite, we do have some more exciting things that definitely want to bring to the viewers. But for people to get their hands on that information, I would say please do go to Erica Savage Politics. It's ERICA Savage, SAVAGE, politics.com. It takes all of 6 seconds to sign up to receive the newsletter and all updates that will be coming forward from Savage Politics and the Savage Political Bite.
Great, great. We'll have the producers put that in the lower thirds if they weren't able to catch that, if they didn't have access to pen and paper, and so that they can go ahead. It's certainly worthwhile, and I read it regularly and look forward to it. And it is very concise and digestible, so that you get that needed information. It registers with you, and then you can go on about your day. Because I totally agree. We are in the world of information overload, and so
Mhm.
if you can get something that's informative and objective, that just helps with the learning and engagement process. So thank you for what you do as it relates to that, and birthing that idea. Before we wrap up, you're going to host a dinner. You get to invite 3 individuals on an international scale that we may or may not be familiar with. Who would those individuals be, and what would you serve for dinner?
Oh, I love that question. So of course, Fannie Lou Hamer.
Yeah.
I got to have her there. I also would love to have. I would say, oh, this is a really good question. I think Ella Jo Baker,
Okay.
because she is just somebody that I'm absolutely fascinated with. Particularly all of the women who were not credited as strongly as some other people were, particularly the men, and their engagement in the Civil Rights Act movement as strategists, as incredible organizers, but women who really kind of helped focus the movement. And I would think the third person that I would invite, looking over at my bookshelf real quick, would be James Baldwin. Yeah, he's at the top
Yeah.
of my book stand. Yeah, definitely James Baldwin. His wisdom has definitely served as a salve, as a balm, and as a really reflective place, I believe, for our community and just communities at large. Really, is much bigger. And I would say, what would I have for dinner? It would have to be some type of international cuisine. Would definitely like to excite the palate a bit.
Okay, 'cause you are indeed a foodie, and you listen. You are so adorable with your massive library in the back, and you're like, "Let me look at my bookshelf." And I'm like,
Which, let me tell your viewers, Dr. Wilson has a incredible library in her
"Oh,
beautiful and lovely home. It's just like sitting down in one of those spaces and feeling like you're just being hugged by incredible knowledge.
oh,
So,
that's so
yeah.
sweet, so sweet." He's in the ancestral stage now, but a dear friend, no longer with us, George Curry, who produced Emerge
Mm,
magazine, and so I always have him in the back of my mind, and he always talks about how you can tell a lot about a person. Not only about the library that they have, but if they even in fact have a library.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I mean, I can look on this shelf like this is one book that you bought me that I read.
Oh,
And
okay.
so, yeah, so these are, I mean, it is incredibly important. My grandmother, my late grandmother, was a librarian in Albany, Georgia. And so walked and grew up in libraries. And so I think that, as you said, that that is not a casual point, that that is something that affirms kind of who you're around.
Yeah. Well, trailblazers are in your DNA, and you were doing that, in certainly in the present moment. And again, Fannie Lou Hamer is around you and in your aura, and Ida B. Wells and Ella Baker. You have such a drive and such a passion, and I've always loved that about you and had the utmost of respect. We sometimes, not sometimes, more often than not, many people just operate in the realm of fear, and they have all of this, they have great visions and great desires and great aspirations. But there's that fear that prevents them from taking just the first step. And so with anything, if you take the first step and then the second, you're headed down that path, and then you will eventually arrive there. And so there has not been anything that you have not envisioned and in birth, which I'm going to go get my pilot's license, and the next thing I know you've gotten a pilot's license and you're flying. When I think I'm going to go to the Maldives this year, and then I'm headed to the Maldives, and so I again, and then of course the political piece that's just who you are. Again, not to your mom and dad, and certainly your dad and his direct influence in that regard. But I'll never forget that day. I think we were in my family room, and you said, "I'm going to do this," and so you've never lost contact with Albany, and that's, as I love what you said earlier, Albany's daughter. But now a huge gain for the politic of DC and that whole community there. You are thriving, and again, who knew in such a short period of time what you were able to do in that window, and then the international piece. So we could go on and on. I don't know what's going on in Venus and Mars, but I would not be surprised. I
Stay
would not be
tuned.
surprised. Yeah, exactly, exactly. But thank you so much for joining me today. Let us know, or let me know, so that we can get you back to learn about what's the next phase of Savage Politics and the great things that you're doing. If Joy Reid is watching, I don't know if they
Oh,
found the host for her show yet, but when
they
they were
have
looking, I
it.
tweeted, I was like, I've got the perfect person for you, Erica Savage Wilson. So you were already on a national platform on a weekly basis with the Martin show and Roland Martin Unfiltered, and you do an outstanding job with that. So I'm just excited about what the future holds for you, and I'm just honored to be a part of that space. So thank you for honoring me for this interview today.
Oh, and thank you so much. I clearly believe, if I can say right before we sign off, is that the belief that, God lets you know how much He loves you by the incredible people that He places around you. And that would be one, Dr. Wendy and Wilson. So it's great to have people that are really doing the same thing, and that definitely broadening continually. So thank you. I
You're
appreciate this.
welcome. You're welcome. Love you to pieces. We'll chat soon. Thank you for joining me. Viewers, thank you for joining me for this edition of Realizing Potential. I'm Wendy Wilson, and I look forward to seeing you next time.